All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jack Kimball. I'm the chairman of the Granite State Patriots Liberty PAC. I see a lot of familiar faces out there today. I want to thank Speaker of the House, Bill O'Brien, for being here and all the hard work you put in this bill. I'm glad I'm not you. And listen, I'm sincere when I say this, all of you state reps and the legislation that you worked so hard and passed. I mean, that's just, to me, just sitting back and watching this was phenomenal. So I applaud you and thank you very much for what you've done for the state. It's not an easy job. I know it. I know it's difficult to come out on a day you're not in session, with Republicans, most of us in this room, I think, and that doesn't matter because Rosa Koire is a liberal Democrat. I'm a conservative Republican. But the thing I say all the time is we are Americans and should be before we're anything else. And one of the things I'll tell you is that what Rose is doing, as far as I'm concerned, is very patriotic. And she's a warrior. She's very brave coming out and doing this and traveling the country to spread the word. I got on board with the United Nations Agenda 21 about 3.5 months ago. Folks, I didn't know anything about it either. And a lot of you may be just getting on board too. This is probably the biggest threat to our liberty and freedom, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that this country faces right now. They've had a 20-year head start, and we're playing catch-up. But we're going to catch up. That's a promise. My PAC I'm announcing today is going to change its focus and focus 100% on eradicating this from our state. That's what we're going to do. Today you're going to hear a wonderful presentation. I've heard Rosa speak now twice. It's entrancing. You will not be bored, and you're going to leave here with a wealth of very valuable information. You're going to get the opportunity to ask questions, and please ask. You're going to get some really substantive answers, and you're going to walk out of here with an oh my God. And we all have to pull together. It doesn't matter. This runs the gamut. Republicans, Democrats, Independents. There's no party lines here. Rosa, she's an ASA, is a forensic commercial real estate appraiser specializing in eminent domain valuation. Her nearly 30 years of experience analyzing land use and property value enabled her to recognize the planning revolution sweeping the nation. While fighting to stop a huge redevelopment project in her city, she researched the corporate, political, and financial interests behind it and found United Nations Agenda 21. Rosa speaks across the nation, and she's a regular blogger on her website, DemocratsAgainstUNAgenda21.com. Please, nice round of applause for Rosa Koire.
Thank you, Jack. Here we go. Here I come. There we go. How's that? Good. All right. Well, I thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with you. And I am Rosa Koire. And it's incredible what New Hampshire has been doing. And the eyes of the nation are definitely on you. I want you to know. So I'll tell you just briefly, quickly about myself. I am a commercial real estate appraiser. My specialty is eminent domain valuation. And for 30 years, I've been playing like Jimi Hendrix. I hope that doesn't happen again. But for 30 years, I've worked for the California Department of Transportation. I'm a district branch chief, and I've just retired. I'm a litigation support person and an expert witness in land use and property valuation. And those years of analysis and litigation support prepared me for recognizing the planning revolution that was sweeping the nation, that I first noticed back in 2002. And in researching that, as well as in fighting a huge fraudulent redevelopment project in my city, where I was actually elected to the project area committee, and from sitting on that committee and doing research, I found that the whole project was fraudulent, and it's a long deal, but through researching that, I found the issues behind it, and they led to United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. Like one of your members said in his testimony in regards to House Bill 1634, I was a skeptic. And as well you should be. But in doing the research, I found that this really wasn't something that was a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy fact. And this information is fully documented. Everything that I'm going to be talking about today is a fact. And if I'm speculating or I'm giving my opinion on something, I'll tell you. Otherwise, everything I'm talking about is fully documented. So I know that as Americans, you're going to find yourselves deeply at odds with and completely concerned by the agenda for the 21st century. And that is what it's called by the United Nations and the world. It's not Catch-22, it's not Area 51, it's Agenda 21 because it is the agenda for the 21st century. That is what it's called by the United Nations. It's a blueprint. It is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all information, all energy, all means of production, and all human beings in the world. It is a totally comprehensive plan. Yes, it's we'll just do what we can with the fabulous technology of our 21st century here. It is a transition from representative government. Now this is serious. It's a transition from representative government to government by unelected boards and commissions. It is truly an erection of a shadow government, of another layer of government, of a parallel government. This is what it is. It is an erasure of jurisdictional boundaries. It is a loss of private property rights, a loss of sovereignty, both personal, physical sovereignty, and physical sovereignty in terms of our nation. And it's a loss of our freedom. So of course we're going to be concerned about this, all of us, not just as Americans, but as free human beings. Agenda 21 Sustainable Development was signed onto by 179 nations, including the United States, in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, at the Earth Summit, the United Nations Earth Summit. George H.W. Bush committed the United States to implementing sustainable development, and it has been supported by every president ever since. It's a global plan, but it's implemented locally. Now you know that just the day before yesterday was the end of the 20th anniversary of the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit. They had it again in Rio, and of course you're seeing that if you read the papers, they'll say it was a total failure, that they didn't get what they wanted. This is really not true. This has been a very successful program. It is global, but it's implemented locally, and you will see it locally. It is not called Agenda 21. And that's how when you go, when you're questioning your staff or your planners or your regional planning commission, and they say, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of Agenda 21. Or lately what we're hearing is, oh, that Agenda 21. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. That's that dusty old 20-year-old plan that has no teeth, it's non-binding, and it's nothing to worry about. That is a lie. This plan is implemented in the United States. It is the biggest public relations scam in the history of the world. But it's far more than that. The agenda for the 21st century is a recipe for destruction. It enables and justifies monitoring and metering and restricting our energy and water usage through smart meters, instituting a carbon tax on industry, pulverizing our roads and destroying our dams, sinking our economy, exhausting our military with endless war, diagnosing a huge portion of our population with mental illness and drugging us, bleeding our transportation budget with high-cost trains to nowhere, revamping our school system by inserting sustainable development principles from pre-kindergarten all the way to postgraduate school. Declaring our public lands off limits to humans, changing every land use document in the nation to require high-density housing in city centers in order to more easily control, monitor, and surveil us, allowing warrantless searches and seizures, domestic surveillance, identifying us as a potential enemy combatant in our own nation. You know, if an enemy was trying to destroy us, they couldn't do a better job. This is the erection of a corporatocracy. It is a global totalitarian state, and it is in progress right now. It doesn't come with flashing lights. It doesn't come with labels. As I said, you will not see it called Agenda 21. And I know it sounds crazy, and it definitely is crazy. I am not crazy. The plan is crazy. So there's an overarching political and social philosophy that goes with it, and it's communitarianism. And what communitarianism says is that the individual's rights have to be balanced with the rights of the community. Now, we know what the individual's rights are. We are guaranteed our individual rights by our Constitution. They're not granted to us by our Constitution or by our government. We were born with those rights. They were given to us by our Creator. The rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are individual rights. But those rights have to be balanced with the rights of the community under communitarianism. Now, what are the rights of the community? They're not delineated. They're not written. They're not identified anywhere. They can change at any time. You will see this called a living document. They can be granted or taken away by whoever is running the government. They need to be balanced, then, with the individual's rights. And you know, the individual's rights will be like a feather, and the community's rights are always like a brick, because there's always more weight to the community than there is to an individual. So when you have everything for the common good, then you have that weight on the community. Now that could be your local community, your local town, that could be your state, that could be your region, that could be the world. In this case, it's usually the global community. Now, I like to use this visual for what that is like, to have your individual rights balanced with the rights of the community. So just think of this. We've got two clear glasses. One is a glass of water, and that's your constitutional republic. That's what we have here, a glass of water. Clear glass of water, like we have here. Now you've got a glass of milk, and that is a communitarian state. Nazi Germany, Communist Russia, Communist China. Those are communitarian states. It's all for the fatherland, all for the common good. Now you're going to take that clear glass of water, your constitutional republic, and balance it with your communitarian state. You've got a clear glass pitcher, you put it down here, and you balance them. You pour them together. What do you have? You've got milk. You've balanced your individual rights with the rights of the community, and they have been subsumed into the rights of the community, and you have lost your individual rights. That is what happens when you balance your rights with the rights of the community. Agenda 21 is dependent on the Hegelian dialectic, and that says that a crisis is created and a solution is posed, and the balance between the two then becomes the new normal, which is something that you never would have accepted. But now that there's a crisis, then you are forced or pressured to accept this new solution. So, what's the crisis? Global warming. Global warming, climate change. Is it climate change or is it global warming? It's whatever it is, it's serious. It is so serious. The planet's in danger. The sea levels are rising. Half of New Hampshire is going to be underwater. You're going to need a snorkel to get out of bed in 100 years or less. There's no time to lose. Biodiversity disappearing. Panic, chaos, collapse. This is part of communitarianism, is to keep us nervous, panicked, and on the edge so that we cannot think clearly and reason. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like in my town from our local newspaper. It says, it's hard to deny that the earth is functioning well over capacity. Like an overworked horse, It's simply a matter of time before the global organism collapses. Feel that panic, that stress? All intelligent people agree that it's our fault. Our selfish, greedy, wasteful ways have almost destroyed the planet. So, what are we going to do about it? The United Nations to the rescue. Here comes the United Nations. It's going to rescue us. In 1987, now, everybody thinks they know what sustainable development is, right? You've heard the term sustainable development. You think, if I were to ask all of you, you might give a different definition of what you think sustainable development is. But this is where the term came from the United Nations in 1987, the Brundtland Commission, the World Commission on the Environment and Development in 1987, chaired by Maurice Strong, who you'll remember from the oil for food scandal. They defined, in a book called Our Common Future, they defined sustainable development, and it is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Sounds good, right? I don't think that the pilgrims coming and setting foot here would have thought to themselves, let's do whatever we can to mess it up for the people in 2012. Nobody was all of us, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, everyone wants the world to be in a position where it's livable after we're gone. But the United Nations said, yes, everything that we are doing now does compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So what are we going to do about it? So they said to that commission, they said, can you come back in 5 years with the action plan, the blueprint for how we implement sustainable development worldwide? And they said, sure. And they did. And here it is. This is the Earth Summit, Agenda 21, the United Nations Program of Action from Rio. It's 300 pages, 40 chapters. You can get it at un.org. It's $25 from the United Nations website. This in itself is a green mask. This is why I call my book Behind the Green Mask, because the green mask, these things look good. This is all, like I said, it's a public relations scam. So when you recognize, though, that what this is about is an inventory and control plan. Inventory and control. So what's unsustainable? According to Chairman Maurice Strong, the middle-class, affluent lifestyle that you either enjoy or aspire to is unsustainable. Single-family residences, private vehicles, air conditioning, appliances, meat eating, and that went over real big in Texas, I'll tell you, livestock, dams. You like to golf? Golf is unsustainable. Many, many other things are unsustainable. There's long lists. Now, this is the way that we live in this country. When you think about the impact of a document like that being accepted in our nation, then you begin to be able to put into context what our loss, our crash of our economy is all about. So there are three, they call these the three pillars. There's three they have kind of a logo of Agenda 21, and it's sort of a Venn diagram. You might have seen it. It's three interlocking circles. Looks like a piece of the Olympic symbol, right? And it looks like this, actually. It's three circles, and it's social equity, the environment, and ecology. And when those are all in balance, in the center, when they're balanced, that's sustainable development, when everything's in balance. Social equity, no one has any more than anyone else. The environment and the economy and social equity balanced together. This covers economics, housing, transportation, land use, health, water, energy, food production, and population control. China was one of the 179 nations that signed on to Agenda 21, and they have their local Agenda 21 document in which they state that they are working on a sterilization vaccine with the United States. Now, one of the main pillars of Agenda 21, it is principle number 15, and it's the precautionary principle. And you may have heard of it. It's very important because whatever you think about climate change, global warming, or whatever, you might think, well, it's not, I think there's plenty of science, whatever you might think to yourself, there's plenty of science that says it's not true. So you say, well, I've got 10 scientists who say it isn't. Well, I've got 20. Well, I have 100. Well, I have 1,000. Well, I've got 10,000. Well, I have 30,000. It doesn't matter because of the precautionary principle. And that says that if an action or a policy has a suspected risk of causing harm to the public or the environment, in the absence of scientific consensus that it is harmful, the action or the policy may be harmful if there's no scientific consensus that it's harmful. The burden of proof that it is not harmful falls on the party who wishes to take the action. You're guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove a negative with the precautionary principle. Now, in the European Union, they use that to make law. In the United States, we use it to make policy. So this is a global plan, but it's implemented locally, as I said. And what it looks like, mostly, what you're going to see is a land use plan. In 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Bush and 178 other leaders signed on to it. It's soft law. It's not a treaty, it's an agreement. It wasn't ratified by the Congress. The very first thing that Clinton did when he took office the next year, he was elected in November, January he took office, June of 1993, he created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And the sole purpose of that council was to implement Agenda 21 in the United States. The very first thing they did was they gave a multi-million-dollar grant to the American Planning Association, which is a private group. They said, can you guys come up with a document for us, a book that we can get into every university, every college, and every planning department in the entire United States to change their land use policies so that we can implement Agenda 21? And the American Planning Association said, sure, we'll be happy to do that. And they did. And this is the cover of their book. It's a 12-pound book. It's called Growing Smart, Legislative Guidebook with Model Statutes for Planning and the Management of Change. And you will find this in your planning departments all across your state, and it's all across the United States. It's in every university. If you want to be a planner, you're studying that book. It came out in 2002, and that was around the time that I discovered that there was a planning revolution going on in our country. That if I went in to appraise somebody's property for a road project, the planning department of whatever city or county it was wasn't able to tell me what could be done with that property by right, no matter what the zoning was. The party was not able to develop by right. Now, this is really a big deal because there were 12 cabinet-level secretaries on the President's Council of Sustainable Development. HUD, EPA, Energy, Transportation, Education, Defense, Interior. We're talking about federal agencies that changed their administrative policies to bring them in line with United Nations Agenda 21. Also on the President's Council of Sustainable Development, we had captains of industry. Ken Lay from Enron was on the President's Council of Sustainable Development. Dow Chemical was on there. Along with them, mostly energy companies, along with them were the environmental groups, Sierra Club, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and others. I doubt that you were there or that you even knew that it was happening. So, growing smart is smart growth. That's where that came from. Growing smart is smart growth. Now, what we've got here, we've got a situation where our country is changing, is about to change radically. And the President's Council of Sustainable Development, they said, you know, the people, when they figure this out, they might not like it. They might get a little upset about it. They might feel a little bit manipulated. So we want to bring them on board. We want the people to feel that this is their plan. So they did something else. They commissioned another book. It's called Sustainable America, A New Consensus. Now, I know you know all about consensus. Consensus means you get a group of people together and you hammer out an issue, you work out what you think about it, everyone's voice is heard until you can work out a program that you can all agree on. But a new consensus is neutralization of the opposition, neutralizing your enemies. A new consensus uses a RAND Corporation mind control technique. This is being used in government meetings all over the United States right now. When you go to a visioning meeting, you are being Delphied. This is the Delphi technique developed by the RAND Corporation in the 1950s, 60s. What it does is it brings a group of people into a meeting, brings them to a predetermined outcome while giving them the impression that it was all their idea. You can Delphi one person all the way to the entire world. And the entire world is being Delphied right now. This is what it is. So, this technique is being used when you're brought in, let's come on, Granite State Future, come on down, let's hear what you think about our new plan for your state. You come in there and you're sitting in those little meeting rooms. You might be in an elementary school. You've got your knees up underneath that little table and you've got your crayons and you're coloring on a map showing what you'd like to see in your town, your vision, your new vision for your city center. This is a RAND Corporation mind control technique because there isn't anything you're going to color on that's going to change that plan. That plan is set before you walk in the room. Those plans are being rolled out all over the United States right now with a deadline of 2013. You'll find them all over the United States. Here it's Granite State Future. You'll see it as one Bay Area, one Valley, one vision, 5 states, one vision, 6 counties, one vision, our Florida, our future. It's all over the United States. What is the big deal with this? It does not allow for dissent. Now, I don't know about you, but I am proud to be an American. And that First Amendment means something. We have the right to speak freely. When you implement a policy that does not allow for dissent, when you've got the new consensus, when you use a communitarian technique that vilifies, marginalizes, mocks, and shames anyone who stands up and says that they do not like this plan, that they do not want to support this plan, then you find yourself knocking on the door of the American Embassy late at night when you're blind, crawling through the bushes and trying to get to a free country. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it that separates us from a country like China? And that is our ability, one of the things is our ability to speak freely. So this plan that's being implemented across the country is designed to stop dissent. So you're going to see it as, you'll see it called capacity building, strengthening community, consensus building. You're going to see it as vibrant, walkable, bikeable, transformation, change. Change. Remember the title of this book? It's Model Statutes for Planning and the Management of Change. Now that is a jargon term. Yes, I said I'm a liberal Democrat, but I did not fall for that change thing. That is rhetoric. That is a manipulation because change is a jargon term. It means something entirely different to the people who are running this plan. It means the word transformation and change means destruction of what we think of as our American system. So, in case you think I'm kidding around here, made this up, this is Rescue Mission, Planet Earth, a children's edition of Agenda 21. This is in schools. It's been given to children for years. This is printed, I think, in 1994. This is a children's edition of Agenda 21. It's by Boutros Ghali, Secretary General of the United Nations, and the children of the world. There's all kinds of drawings and pictures in here about, children who are panicked and absolutely besides themselves with the fear that the planet is being destroyed. And here it says the planet groans every time it registers another birth. There's a little workbook in here, It says, turning Agenda 21 into action is a big challenge for us all. Thousands of people at the United Nations and in governments are working on it. This booklet will show parents and educators how children can start to be a part of this work. Children are being indoctrinated. Through outcome-based education, they're being trained. They're not being taught, they're being trained like animals to be obedient, to not ask questions, to not dissent, to go along, to get along. This is part of this plan. As elected officials, I'd like you to know something, and that is that the American Planning Association, which is the group that put out Growing Smart, has been working on and indoctrinating planners. They put out a 12-week-long communications boot camp from November 2011 to January 2012, where they said that they panicked. They said people are becoming aware of what's going on. We need to change our jargon. We need to re-educate planners, re-propagandize our elected officials. Right here in the Virginia Chapter Annual Conference, this was from 2011, it says the key strategy should be to inoculate elected officials, cultivate influentials. We want to keep them prepared. We want to change their minds. We want to block the opposition. This is what the American Planning Association is saying now. They are changing their jargon. They don't want to use smart growth anymore. They now use quality growth, and they want you to believe that without planning, you will not have, and I'm not talking, look, planning, I'm an appraiser. The idea of planning is not a bad one. Everyone plans. You leave the house in the morning, you're planning. But this goes beyond planning. What this is far deeper than planning. This is actually changing our form of government. And it has the illusion of being just something that you need in order to know what building should go next to another in the center of your town. But it is far more than that. What they're saying here is that they want to reframe planning in economic terms. They want to do aggressive outreach and have a game plan for the opposition. They are inoculating elected officials. You will hear planners come and tell you that either they've never heard of Agenda 21 or there's nothing wrong with it or planning is great. Regionalization is a good thing. That is what you're going to hear. It's an economic driver. So what's this about? How does it come together? We're talking about greenhouse gas emissions as the mask for this because they say life in the suburbs and the rural areas is unsustainable because we release too many greenhouse gas emissions, right? It's that evil sprawl, which I have to tell you is probably the entire state of New Hampshire. Okay? Now, they say it costs too much to get public transportation out to the rural and suburban areas, so it's better to move all the people into city centers and pack them into smart growth. What's smart growth? It's ground floor retail, 12 feet high, built right to the edge of the sidewalk. 1, 2, 3, or more stories of residential above, could be condos or apartments. Around the back in an alley, you've got access for parking for 1 car or less per unit. Or out in the front, you've got a bike lane. You have 1 lane of traffic because you have done your traffic calming. And you've got a median, and then on the other side of the street, it's the same. You might have a transit-oriented development system there. You might call it a transit village. Used to be a city, now it's a transit village. Doesn't matter whether you actually have real transit, it could be planned transit. Because with your sustainable community strategies, you can use transportation dollars to subsidize for-profit housing. And this is what this is about. This is about subsidizing a design style that does not pencil out. All across the nation, you will find this in small cities, in large cities, in little towns. It looks just the same. Ground floor retail, often bankrupt, often not even built out. You look in through the window and it's dirt floor. Upstairs, you're going to find condos or apartments that are either unoccupied or are being used for transitory, transient housing. Well, without those traveling nurses, those places would really be down the tubes. So this is what you have. You have an unbalancing also of your economic system because your housing has been completely upended with these units that are being packed into your city centers, that are being subsidized. I tell you, it's me, I know. So, okay, sorry. Now, okay, here's how they're doing it. One of the many ways, and you have addressed this in your legislation, and now you have your study bill. And this is important because it's good to know this is what we do. You don't just know this. It takes quite a while to put all of this together, and I hope I'm helping today. ICLEI is the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. It's an international group. It was founded in 1990 before Agenda 21 with the sole purpose of implementing Agenda 21 worldwide. They say they represent 600 million people in 70 countries around the world, and most people have never heard of them. They are a non-governmental organization, United Nations sponsored. It's a stealth organization. It is a policy and legislation arm of the United Nations. It was designed to monitor and measure your greenhouse gas emissions for a fee, or if you don't have the money, they'll be happy to give you that software without charging you. It is a non-governmental organization made up of elected officials. Now, you know you've got open meeting laws. The public has to be able to come in to any official meeting. But this is a non-governmental group that has elected officials sitting on the boards. My own county, Sonoma County, California, the national board, my county supervisor is sitting on the national board of the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. She voted to give an $83,000 no-bid contract to ICLEI to do the greenhouse gas emissions protocols for our county. I reported her to the California Fair Political Practices Commission for a conflict of interest, and they declined to investigate. There is no way to get into these meetings unless you're part of them. You don't know where they meet, you don't know what they're talking about, but they are making policy. Now, you've got 7 cities here in New Hampshire that are members. Now, ICLEI is the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives, but they've changed their name now. Now they call themselves Local Governments for Sustainability, because they realize that we are waking up, we are aware. So, who is a member here in New Hampshire? Keene, Nashua, Portsmouth, Wolfboro, Guilford, Plymouth, Rochester, and something that is not at all unusual, Southwest Regional Planning Commission. You will often find your metropolitan planning organizations and your councils of government are affiliate members of ICLEI. So, back in when Obama was running for office the last time, he made a commitment for the United States. He said that we would be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. That seems like an awful lot, doesn't it? So I went and I found a chart. I said, at what year were we releasing 80% below 1990 levels of greenhouse gas emissions, CO2, in the United States? So I found a chart. It's in my book. I took 80% off. I went, what year? What year do you think? 1934. A great year for this nation. I'm sure we were producing a lot. And this is what you look at. What do you need? What do you use? We use energy. That is what produces greenhouse gas emissions. Energy production, energy usage, production, industry. In 1934, our nation was in the depths of the Depression. But if you look at it in terms of per capita, we have a lot more people, had a lot more people in 1934, have a lot more people now than we did in 1934. So if you're looking at per capita reductions, we're probably back in the 1880s. In the 1880s. We weren't producing very much at that time. So this is communitarianism. The end justifies the means. It's all for the common good. It's consensus. and it's secret. Now, I know that the United States did not ratify the Kyoto Treaty. But that did not stop 1,055 United States mayors from doing so. The Mayor's Climate Protection Center, which is a part of ICLEI, agreed to Kyoto. That's anti-sprawl, smart growth, and carbon trading. Now, you've got 9 cities here in New Hampshire that have signed on to this. Concord, Dover, Hanover, Keene, Lebanon, Manchester, Nashua, Portsmouth, and Rochester have all agreed to Kyoto protocols. Now, I was looking at Kyoto and I said, hey, I wonder what nation has reduced their what nation that's a signatory to Kyoto, which one has reduced their greenhouse gas emissions the most? I wonder. So I checked it out and I look and I find, what do I find? What nation? Latvia. Clinging desperately to the edge of the former Soviet Union is little tiny Latvia, which has no heat in the winter, no cold in the summer, no air conditioning, concrete blocks. What else is Latvia known for? Their human rights abuses. So what does that tell you? That you too can drastically reduce your greenhouse gas emissions if you totally control your population. That's a goal. The local agenda planning guide, Agenda 21 planning guide, you're going to find this. You'll find this in your planning departments at your regional planning commissions. This is put out by ICLEI, the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives. It's an introduction to sustainable development planning. And you'll find this. It's all across the United States. I always say we have to tie down the planners, hold them in the room so we can run and get it off the shelf there. That has documentation on how to do a visioning meeting, how to set up the stakeholders meetings, because you know what? Who gets invited to a visioning meeting? It's very unlikely that you will be there. What happens is they may or may not put a little ad in the paper the day of the meeting, but the people who get invited to those visioning meetings are people who are already on board. They are the consultants. You'll find them voting. Oh, it's a great plan. They're going to vote for it. They're on board. You'll have people who are elected, not elected officials, of course, will be there who are on board with it. You'll have unelected people who are on boards and commissions. You have people who are coming out of the neighborhoods who have been identified as being willing to go along, to get along. Those people are often elevated to positions of power. They're elected as neighborhood association presidents by default. No one shows up. They say they represent the entire neighborhood. And this is who the stakeholders are considered to be. The environmental groups are there. These are the people who go to the visioning meetings. So what is the goal? They use the greenhouse gas mask of environmental concern to impose the 2 elements of Agenda 21, and that is smart growth, which is moving populations into concentrated city centers, restricting mobility, and the wildlands. And that is getting people out of rural areas, blocking access to wilderness roads and resources, and shifting land ownership. This is a plan to shift land ownership from private hands to public, to take land out of production. Now, this is the goal, is to move us out of the rural and suburban areas and into the city centers. And you will hear that it's about preserving farmland. It is not. This is not what this plan is about. So what they do is they change your land use documents. Now, your master plan, your comprehensive plan, your general plan, these are the plans that every city, every county, every town, every state, there are some places in the country that don't have them, but most do. And they are pretty much the document, the underlying document that says what your town wants to see, has all the different elements of your town. You know, your zoning has to be brought into compliance with that. Your zoning may not match up with your general plan or your master plan. It needs to be brought into compliance with it. People will not know this until they go in to develop their property. You walk in, you say, hey, I'm in the center of town, I'm zone C2 commercial, I want to put up a little strip center there. Well, no, because in the general plan, in the master plan, you are shown as transit village. That means you have to put ground floor retail and residential. You've got to have mixed use in order to get your permits to develop. You can't just easily walk in and get a loan from a bank to do that if you don't have a track record doing that. Your risk rates are all different when you've got two different uses. You're looking at someone who's a specialized developer. You're looking at a property owner who may not be able to develop their own property. This happens all across the United States. There's a pressure to develop smart growth. Now, this is the preferred development style of United Nations Agenda 21, and it is also an ideology. So how are they doing it? As you know, as you experience, the federal and state dollars for transportation are being directed through your metropolitan planning organizations, your regional planning commissions. That money, that federal transportation money, is being directed. Housing and transportation for the first time are together because your transportation dollars can be used for smart growth. So the money is being directed in this way, and if communities don't want to play ball, they don't want that, they aren't going to get transportation dollars. So I'll show you, here's the cover of the Marin County, this is a Marin County, California general plan. This is the cover of it. Real nice rural county. Right inside of the general plan, you'll see the image of United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. This is not unusual. It's all across the United States, Los Angeles County, all over the counties, you'll see it. And, you'll see it as a visioning project, a Granite State future. What is that? 70 counties, 1.3 million people with a vision for the future. You get your grant from HUD, your $3.4 million for your sustainable planning, right? And that is all about smart growth. Your initiatives, your HUD, your HUD, DOT, Department of Energy, EPA, these are grants you get for climate action plans, livable communities, transit-oriented development, complete streets and transit villages. This is all coming through the feds. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Plan New Hampshire, take a look at that, visioning for a sustainable community. It says it develops leadership among the citizenry. Heals, New Hampshire, healthy eating, active living. Excuse me, obesity. It's called an epidemic now. What does that look like? It looks like you got to change your land use documents so that nobody will be fat. Right? Because you're fat because you live in the suburbs. You have to bring people into the inner city where they're going to ride the bus and then they won't be fat anymore. Right? Dover 2023. Renaissance downtowns for Nashua. What do they say? They say transformative projects for the triple bottom line, which is social, economic, and environmental. That's all part of Agenda 21. Like I said, you're not going to see it. Excuse me. Sorry, I have a cold here. You don't see it called Agenda 21. So you're going to have your corridor management plans. Sorry. I might need to take a minute here. Not yet. You could actually, but I want you to know how incredibly pervasive this is. You've got your corridor management plan that's coming for your scenic byway, right? Yes, and here it is. Land use ordinances can be created to preserve rural character. If you lose your designation, you're going to lose the federal money, right? You want to preserve your corridor by restricting development. Now they say that they don't affect your land use, right? They say they're not directing your land use. That's all about the locals. But if you don't get that money unless you design it and you restrict it, what kind of control do you have? If they're talking about this as a living document, and then you're finding that they change the rules after you've signed on, That's the situation that you have no power over. You've got responsibilities and you don't know what they are. They also talk about balancing your concerns. This is right out of, I'm looking at the corridor management plan here for Dover. They're talking about balancing your concerns. This is this is exactly what I'm talking about, communitarian mob rule. Because the number of owners on 108 is far less than the people who are going to be voting with their clickers in those visioning meetings. Those property owners probably aren't in those meetings. This is communitarianism. In the Bay Area, it's $200 billion. $200 billion over 25 years for all 9 Bay Area counties. And you only get that transportation money if you agree to build smart growth. And where they tell you to. They have priority development areas. You're going to see it. It'll look like the same plan all across the United States, whether it's Dover 2023, whether it's One Granite State Future, whether it's the Hanoi Capital Regional Plan 2030, Hanoi, Vietnam. They're all the same plan. It's an unelected shadow government, and it's sold to you as an economic driver. So, it's an ideology. It's not just a design style. It's new urbanism, and it's anti-rural. You'll find the EPA is partnering in 501c3s. Your federal agencies are creating 501c3s with partners so that they can pressure you to accept these land use plans. It gets worse, though. There's 11 megaregions. You thought we had 50 states. There's 11 megaregions. New Hampshire, look at me. What can I do? I'm sorry I have a cold. I'm doing my best here. We're used to it. Are you? Really? I know. I was just in Florida, so. New Hampshire is part of the Northeast megaregion. Okay, I know you know that. What is this all about? You are being told that it's an economic driver, that if you don't join together with your regional group, you're going to get bowled over by all the other regions, right? That you're going to go under, that you're not going to be able to compete, right? The Northeast megaregion goes from northern Virginia to southern Maine, from the Appalachians all the way to the Atlantic. It's huge. It's part. Now think about this. These break jurisdictional boundaries. This is important because what this means is that as elected officials, you will not have any power. You'll be rubber stamping these unelected boards and commissions. Now they're made up of elected officials, right? But you know how much power you have when you're one of 11 states or parts of 11 states, 142 counties, hundreds of cities. It's part of 11 states, part or all: Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire. But not all of New Hampshire, because a lot of New Hampshire is in the wildlands. Okay, now what is this? The megaregions are 26% of the... Now, I said we were 11 megaregions. It's not that the country got chopped up into 11 pieces. No. It's that this is genius, really, honestly. This plan is so progressed. You've got your 11 megaregions all around. That's a total of 26% of our land area in the United States. They're not contiguous. They're around the country. The other 74% is the wildlands. Now, here's one, Cascadia, part of Oregon, part of Washington, and part of Canada. The one in Southern California includes part of Mexico. Breaking jurisdictional boundaries, breaking sovereign boundaries. Most of the cities are ICLEI cities. Most of the population of the United States lives in an ICLEI city. Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. Those are ICLEI cities. Most of the country is in ICLEI cities. They have agreed to be part of this. High-speed rail is the number one building block. It's designed to fail. It's designed to sink your transportation. It's designed to take your transportation dollars and pound them down a rat hole. That's what it's about. It's about taking your money in every possible way. This is a plan to sink our economy. Social equity. We got a long way to fall. Like I say, if you got more than one toilet in your house, you're doing a lot better than most people, and probably one of the poorest person you'll see out on the street here in New Hampshire is wealthier than most of the people that we're talking about bringing ourselves into social equity with. You want to see what it looks like? It looks like the EU, the European Union, which started as a trade agreement. It is designed to fail. Redesigning government. I was just on a international global governance conference. I was one of the speakers at this conference with President Václav Klaus of the Czech Republic, Ambassador John Bolton, former ambassador to the United Nations, and Prime Minister John Howard of Australia. We were talking about global governance, and this is what this is. This is what Václav Klaus, what President Klaus was saying, is that the Czech Republic got its freedom from the Soviet Union only to become basically enslaved by Brussels. The EU is run through Brussels. They have the power to rubber stamp. This is where this is going. Regions. Livable communities, sustainable communities, community partnerships, one planet communities, unelected boards and commissions, a loss of our freedom and our sovereignty. This is what it's about. Now, the United Nations has a land use policy. They came up with it in 1976 at their Conference on Human Settlements, which is where we live, by the way. You think you live in a city, it's either a transit village or a human settlement, according to the United Nations. They said land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Oh no. Private land ownership is a principal instrument of the accumulation of wealth, and therefore it contributes to social injustice. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable. Public control of land use. This is the goal, is to take land out of private ownership and move it into control by the government. If you have doubts about communitarian law in the United States, you look no further than the 2005 Supreme Court decision, the Kelo decision. And what that did not, some people think that gave government the right to take your property and give it to you. No, that already existed under redevelopment. What the Kelo decision did was it redefined public use. Under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, we're guaranteed the right of just compensation when our land is taken for public use by our government, right? Well, public use, it's a road. We think we know what a public use is. No, the Supreme Court changed it to anything that makes more money for your municipality is considered to be a public use. They changed the definition of the public use. The end justifies the means, and this is transferring land. 16% of New Hampshire is owned by federal, state, and local government. That's not nearly enough on this plan. We're talking about the wildlands. This is a plan to remove humans and human activity from rural and suburban areas. Now, you are going to find extreme population projections that say, I know that New Hampshire has pretty much grown like about 1.5% a year, but you will see extreme population projections for every single city, county, state across the United States put out by the Census Bureau, saying that we are about to be inundated by huge numbers of people. And since we are using up nature, We need to be able to put those people somewhere. Where are we going to put those people? Here's this crisis. We're going to have to put them in smart growth in the center of your town. So, why you need linkages for the animals to get together so that Bambi can get together with Bambo. It's linkages and corridors. So what's unsustainable? Dams, reservoirs. You might use that water. Erosion control, flood control, brush cutting, forest management. How about those fires in the West? They've been releasing wild carnivores into the wild. In Florida, they're releasing the wild Florida panther. They're releasing wolves in the Northeast, bringing back wild carnivores into the wild. You'll find that your land, when you own land in the rural areas, you are restricted with view sheds, ridge lines, biotic resources, streamside thresholds. These are regulatory restrictions. As an appraiser, one of my last jobs, I just have retired. One of the last things I did was I appraised a 1,400-acre ranch. I wanted to know what the guy could do with it. I went to the county. Pretty much nothing. 1,400 acres, right next to the freeway. So then I went around and I checked into other properties that had sold recently. I said, what have you been able to do with your property? This one guy said to me, Rosa, we've got 1,000 acres here. It's taken us 10 years to get permits to put one house on it. We had to donate 400 acres to the Sonoma County Land Trust in order to do that. Regulatory takings. I call it the no-pay APA. The American Planning Association, in Growing Smart Legislative Guidebook, tells planners how not to compensate you for your property rights. That book is compiled. It's a compilation of some of the worst restrictions on property that you have ever seen. And it's incremental. Well, we don't think we can pull this off quite yet in Concord, but we're going to try this one and we'll work up to it. This is what you see. You know, when we're talking about linkages and corridors, just think about this one. Yellowstone to Yukon. Yellowstone to Yukon. That's a long way. Now think about the corridor that runs between Canada and the United States, down the eastern shore, across the southern part, and up the western part of the United States. They don't own these corridors, do they? So there has to be restriction on your use so that animals can progress from one area to the other. Some of these are a half a state wide. Restrictions, conservation easements that split your title. Conservation easements are a racket. Loss of agriculture and a loss of tax base. You find that you have less and less people in the rural areas. Now people say, well, hey, no one's pushing me off of my rural land. I've got my well here. I'm doing fine. I've got my 30 acres, my 60 acres, my 2 acres, whatever I have. I'm doing great here. Nobody's pushing me off. Think about this. Closure of postal services in the rural areas. Closure of schools out in the rural areas. Monitoring of wells. Well monitoring is coming. ICLEI has a water campaign that they're rolling out in Southeast Asia and Australia that is coming our way. This will monitor and control all water across the United States. They've got it right here, and it says that water has to be managed as a finite economic resource. I guess it never rains. Charges for water must reflect the true value of water resources. This means that your water costs, if you're an agricultural producer, your water costs need to be low so that you can produce food for our country. We are going to see tremendous increase in costs for water. You see misidentification of wetlands all across the United States. Something else you're going to see if you're out in a rural area, I live in a rural county, 1,384 miles of rural roads, county roads. Our county supervisors about 2 years ago said, you know what, there just isn't enough money to pave those. We're only going to be paving 150 miles of that 1,384 miles of county roads, and the rest will be pulverized and turned to gravel. Think that's going to impact your property value, your ability to get to your property, to bring your goods to market? And did you know, I'm sure you do know, that the federal government, the federal funding system for transportation favors more urban populated areas, no matter how many roads you have. And here in New Hampshire, you've got the Innovative Land Use Planning Techniques Handbook for Sustainable Development. Innovative Land Use Planning Techniques Handbook for Sustainable Development, put out by the Department of Environmental Sciences and the Association of Regional Planning Commissions. These involve transfer of development rights from the rural areas to the city centers so that you can build higher and higher and denser buildings in your city centers. Land banks that will sell credits, development credits, and conservation easements. You know, we're dealing with something right now. We're dealing with with a shocking experience where the people are at war with their government. And it happens parcel by parcel. So people do not know that this is happening all across the United States. Now, I know you've probably heard of the Sacketts. That's the couple in Idaho that was living next to that lake, near a lake, on an incline. They got their permit to build their house, and they started their land moving. And here comes the EPA knocking on their air there and said, hey, you got to stop this because you've got a wetland here. And they said, we got our permits. They said, we don't care if you have permits. We're going to fine you $37,000 a day. You have to put your land back the way it was. So they fought. They went to the Supreme Court. What did they get? What did they win? It's an outrage that they went all the way to the United States Supreme Court on a case like this. But what did they win? That means that the EPA appealed it every time they lost. So what happens? They get all the way up there. What did they win? They won the right to a hearing to challenge the government's threats to fine them for building on their own land. They had to win the right to challenge the federal government. You want to check out the nonprofits. This is what it is. This is unelected boards and commissions. This is breaking your jurisdictional boundaries. This is the erection of a new layer of bureaucracy. And it is connected all through corporations, nonprofits, and government partnering together. Federal government, nonprofits, and corporations, as well as state and local governments as well. What you're seeing here, I think this would be something good to take a look at. When I was talking about mega regions, you want to look at America2050.org. That is a plan of the Regional Plan Association. They have a project, it's called Northeast Landscapes. It gives grants to new nonprofits to partner with established nonprofits so that they can learn how to pressure for smart growth. This is what it's designed to do. So they need a comprehensive regional approach beyond property boundaries and beyond jurisdictions. This is what it's designed to do. It is designed to find that you're actually fighting against not just the federal government, but you're fighting against nonprofits that are funded through grants from the federal government and from corporations. Agenda 21 is a plan to produce social equity by impoverishing populations and creating total dependence on government. This is what it's about. Public-private partnerships are about the public taking the risk and the private sector getting the profit. And you won't see anything worse than public-private partnerships with prisons. Privately owned prisons. What does it take? What do prisons need? They need prisoners. How do you get more prisoners? You make more things crime. And this is what we're looking at. Under the cover of environmentalism, the rigid control of a totalitarian state is in progress right now. That is what is behind the green mask. The abuse of our trust. That's what this is. They have hijacked the environmental movement. It's not what you say, it's what you do. All of the rhetoric sounds so good. It all looks so good. Who doesn't want clean air and water? Who doesn't want to be vibrant, livable? Who doesn't want change, positive change? These are all rhetorical terms. They're all manipulation and jargon terms. And this is about erecting a totalitarian state. And I know you know it. The United States Patriot Act, the U.S. Patriot Act, and the National Defense Authorization Act are part of United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. I never have gotten off of my topic once. All of this is totally and completely related and integral to this plan. Inventory and control. The FBI now, without a warrant, can get your hotel records, your bank records, your internet records, and your telephone records without a warrant. Unreasonable search and seizure. You get searched at the airport as if you're a criminal. I get patted down every single time I'm there. I always ask them, I say, when they're doing it, I say, have you asked yourself if there's anything that you won't do for the money? Have you asked yourself if you have any limit? Is there anything you won't do that they tell you to do? That keeps me in there about an extra half hour. I know you know about that little spy thing. You know, they're talking about having little spy drones that are the size of a fly. But right now they do have a drone the size of a hummingbird, right? There's one, it's got, full visual, full audio, right? And I saw this thing and I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. We're probably going to use it for Afghanistan or so, going in and out of those caves or something like that, right? So I get this newspaper article about it. I get down to the bottom of the article. I'm reading about this little hummingbird thing that's a spy, flies in and out of your windows. It says, no, that's a prototype. It's not likely to look like that when we roll out the real deal because that's a rare bird in, say, New York City. New York City. They're talking about domestic surveillance. All totalitarian states share the same characteristics. We think that it can't happen here. It is happening here. We don't know what to look for. Because we're not out in the street with tanks and guns, we think it's not happening. It is happening. It's as if there's been a football game going on for the last 20 years, and they're out there making touchdowns, and we're having a kegger out in the parking lot. Well, now we're out, we got our helmets and our pads on, and we're up on the board. We're finally up on the board. And we are fighting this across the nation. We have a huge country. We don't even know what goes on half the time in the other town. You will not read this in the newspaper because 5 megacorporations own all of your media. There is a disinformation campaign going on to smear people like me, to call us conspiracy theorists, to say that we have a black helicopter hovering over our head or some idiocy like that. It's like, is there a problem being able to discern what objective reality is? This is true. This is documented. This looks like Sustainable Communities Initiatives. This is what this is. It looks like Granite State Future. All totalitarian states share the same characteristics. Total control of property and means of production. Total information and surveillance. Loss of free speech. Restricted movement. Control of educational systems. And of course, they share the same philosophy, that it's all for the common good. The individual is selfish. It's all for the fatherland. It's all for the homeland. It's all for the homeland. You believe we say that? They also share the Spartan present. Conserve. You're too fat. You eat too much. You use too much. You drive too much. Your house is too big. Restrict, pull in, conserve. You know, I've hardly ever bought anything new. My partner is a general contractor. She built a house, a 2-story house, out of recycled materials. Do I think that's bad? No, I think it's great. This is not about conservation. That is not what this plan is about. What else do totalitarian states share? They share the vision of the glorious future. The skies are always going to be blue. We're going to be living in our smart growth, drinking coffee in the downstairs coffee shop. Nobody's going to be working. It's going to be great. Going to be riding our bicycles. There goes the train. Yeah, everything's great. What else do they share? Terror. The war on terror is a war on us. Communism, fascism, Nazism. It's all for the fatherland. It's all for the common good as defined by our rulers. So who's doing it to you? Here's removing the roadblocks, how to make sustainable development happen now. B of A, University of California, the American Bar Association. Excuse me. National Association of Realtors on Common Ground. Smart growth. All full of smart growth. Universities. Here's Geography 300. Sustainability for the Common Good. 3 credits. Course. It's a core course for the BA. That happens to be Oregon State University, but I'm sure you have something here. HEALS. I told you about healthy eating, active living. It's supposed to be all about eating your apple a day, but instead it's about updating your general plan and adopting zoning ordinances. The natural step approach. Natural step. You're going to see that. 1,000 Friends of, whether it's Wisconsin, Connecticut, New Jersey, Hawaii. These are groups that pressure. They are funded by corporations and they pressure for smart growth and for the wildlands. Fusion centers, you know about that 1 million square foot center that's being built in Utah. That is to retain all of your documents, all of your phone calls, all of your internet records. Well, we're not going to use it, and what are you worried about? Are you a criminal? Well, you probably are, because so many things are being made crime now. In fact, in the town that I live in, it's against the law to smoke in your apartment. Yeah. They want you obedient and quiet, no dissent. No, that's on the way. No drive-throughs, because you're fat. I guess you should be able to ride your bike through there. I don't know why you can't, but no drive-throughs. You're going to see this land use that is more and more and more restrictive. Climate action plans. That's part of your master plan. They will be adopting those climate action plans. You have to read these plans carefully. Bicycle coalitions are the shock troops for smart growth. They are actually advocacy groups that are brought together. They are brought together under leadership conferences where they are taught to agitate for smart growth. The Lung Association has an advocacy arm for smart growth. Unions. AFL-CIO in 2001, they said, we repudiate sprawl and we endorse smart growth. Why? Because most of their members live in urban areas. Walmart is a partner. Schools, universities, you're going to get loyalty points if you haven't seen those yet. Asset-based community development, that came out of Chicago. Obama and Michelle Obama studied asset-based community development. What is that? That is, you are the asset. You will be mapped with your 12-page, 11-page questionnaire asking all details of your life, every element of your life, your aspirations, your goals, your skills, your talents, everything about you, put onto a GIS document with your physical location, asset-based community development, and then you will be doing your mandatory volunteering. Mandatory volunteering, don't you love it? They have the best rhetoric. Last time I thought about that, it was like, mandatory volunteering sounds like slavery to me.
Right.
That's right. So this is what it's about. I mean, this stuff, of course, it's extremely difficult to believe, right? I don't blame you if you feel overwhelmed, because who doesn't? This is an assault on us. It's an attack on us. This is a bloodless coup. It's actually an administrative coup d'etat. And it's being implemented through regulations. Awareness is the first step in the resistance. Without knowing what's happening, we have been manipulated through our educational system with outcome-based education. All across our country, we have planners who have been brought up in this, trained in this, who are indoctrinated in this until it's almost like a cult. There's no silver bullet for it. We have to just educate ourselves. You're in the legislature. Alabama passed SB 477, which is, I mean, just think about the title of this thing and think about, are we in the United States or what? Due Process for Property Rights Act. You gotta love it. No infringement on the property rights with policies that are traceable to Agenda 21. No money to or from any organizations that are related to Agenda 21. That was passed and signed into law by the governor. I'm sure about 20 minutes later they started litigation on that. It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. But
government would be suing them?
I don't know. Wouldn't that be interesting? I think we should be suing the federal government. But I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. This is, we have consultants who are charging millions of dollars for this plan that is the same plan all across the country and all across the world. Millions of dollars. Think about this. Your small economies are shrinking all the time. More and more rules and regulations for agricultural people, more and more rules and regulations for industrial people. Your constituents are struggling to keep their heads above water. And then your government, your local governments are paying consultants for these plans. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to consulting firms for these plans. Restrictions and regulations. They have to be defunded now. We need to call a halt to this. We're doing it all across the nation. People are standing up and speaking out across the country. Legislators, I speak to many, many elected officials, and all of them say, what can we do? We all need to get together. People who have ideas for what to do need to get those ideas out there. I don't have the answer. The answer that I say is that we need critical mass. We need more and more people to understand what's going on so that we can bring pressure to bear on our legislators, because those legislators who are not here today, who don't understand what is going on, those people need to be made aware. And then they need to know that if they are not on board with this and they are not fighting this, that the people are going to take them out of office. This is what is happening. This is a huge movement. It's a true grassroots movement, and you won't read about it in the paper, but it is there, and it's growing all the time. I crisscross the nation. It's my third time on the East Coast in the last 4 weeks. I'm all over the country. It is happening everywhere. Larger and larger and larger groups are becoming aware of this. So you want to do one other thing, and that is huge corporations are part of this. There is a place where this is not a partisan issue. I told you I'm a liberal Democrat. This is not a left-right issue. It's not we're flashing our gang colors here. This is an American issue. And when you're talking to people who are on the left, who are liberal, who are Democrats, you want to talk about the fact that this is a corporatocracy put together by the 1%, that we're looking at restrictions on our food. We're talking about school debt, tremendous debt. This is part of it, sinking our economy. We're talking about the banks. We're talking about smart meters, which is a very good wedge issue, an opening, because this is part inventory and control of United Nations Agenda 21. These are places where we can come together. We need to work together on this. So I encourage you to also recognize that there are major corporations that are giving grants. Siemens Corporation was a German corporation about to go under, about to go bankrupt prior to World War II, until they were rescued by Hitler, who generously granted them slave labor from the concentration camps and money for technology. Siemens partially funded Growing Smart legislative guidebook. They also they are a big solar, they are light and heavy rail, smart grid, and they give grants. That's a lot of money there. IBM, biometrics, they also partnered with the Nazis during World War II. They're the ones who did they're the ones who made it possible to keep track of all the prisoners. Those numbers on the arms, it wasn't you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3. It related to the camps and where you were going to be and what you were going to do. They tattooed people with numbers that corresponded with the IBM computers and those punch cards. They made a wholly owned subsidiary in Germany. They are now doing biometrics to track us by our eye. This is a worldwide totalitarian plan. This is a fascist plan, and it is in progress right now. And there is nothing that is more important to us as Americans right now than to get on board and fight this together. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. So thank you so much for giving me this time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
I got a bunch.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay. Hope I can
I'm
answer.
a selectman in my town also.
Okay.
So I deal with the Nashua Regional Plan. You mentioned the Southwest is a Nashua area too. I got a couple questions as it relates to some of the things we've done. I haven't approached them about Agenda 21, and they've denied Agenda 21. But there's a couple of things that we have done and have experienced that I want to share with you and get your input. One is there was a push to get all towns to bulk buy energy, to get a reduced price. This isn't part of that agenda, is it? I mean, this to me very common sense is that we can get electricity cheaper by bulk buying.
I don't know, it sounds good to me. What I see is the community choice aggregation, which is something new, which is where the community, the town, municipality, the county itself produces the energy through either solar arrays or wind, and there's no limit on what they can charge. And of course, distribution is still through your utility provider. So this sounds like something entirely different.
We also applied for a grant for mixed use, which at first I thought was, I'd like to learn more about it, but it actually morphed into an ordinance. We have town ordinances. Now, when you mentioned that these mixed use had to have a business above, you know, with residents above it, I mean, we haven't got that far, but this money that they have now got for a grant, is this the money that you're referring to? That
likely, very likely. And that is what mixed use is. It's a mix of uses. And it's subsidized, right? It's going to be subsidized.
It's come from somewhere.
Right.
I don't know
and
where
so, you know, it's like you want to ask yourself, I mean, this is also low-income housing providers are very much a partner in this. Enterprise Community Development and LISC are big low-income housing providers. What they're doing is they're glutting the market with these units, and they're being paid sometimes $300,000 a unit for a unit that you could go out and get for $150,000 on the market.
That was my final question, because I'm the person that has been advocating this bill for the last 2 years, and that is workforce housing. And it has morphed into something to get passed, which is a limit on the maximum amount or minimum amount, but making it deeded so it has to stay workforce housing. Is workforce housing part of it?
Yeah, it is. You know, I'll tell you something. I'm an appraiser. I don't appraise houses. I appraise big things, and shopping centers or refineries, things like that. And as an appraiser, a designated appraiser, I have attended. Of course, for my continuing education, I have to take courses, and I've attended the courses in low-income housing valuation, right? And what they do is they have they sell low-income housing tax credits to institutional lenders and large institutions like B of A. And this is a dollar for dollar write-off their tax bottom line that they exchange. Then what they tell appraisers is, at the expiration of that 15-year term for those low-income housing tax credits, that the building, the structure itself is worth zero. And then it then goes for nothing to the low-income housing provider. That the appraiser is supposed to value it as zero. And these are things that you need to be on the lookout for, because what you're doing is you're doing social engineering in your town. And you're paying for it. Is this redistribution of youth? I wish it was of youth, of wealth. Yeah, it is. This is what you're doing. You're transferring. And look, I mean, think about this. It's like a spiral. We're recirculating a smaller and smaller and smaller amount of money all the time on the backs of the few people who are actually still generating taxes. And, so one thing also I'd like to say, you said that your people have not heard of Agenda 21. Ask them if they've heard of sustainable development, because that's what they call it. They don't call it Agenda 21, and I hope you recognize that that is what it's called. It's the agenda for the 21st century, and that, this whole thing about the, tinfoil hat thing is really, that is just, it's so yesterday.
Yeah. One last question.
Yes, please.
And it is somewhat personal.
Oh, okay.
I believe we're all Republicans here. I can't speak, I don't know if we're all here, but you mentioned that you're a liberal Democrat.
Yes, I am.
I understand that in Southern California, that's really probably the only party, but when you look at all of these issues, and the genesis of these issues, short of HW and his bringing in Agenda 21, these are all Democratic issues.
No, they're not. This is what's really interesting about this. I've been a Democrat since 1974. I'm originally from Southern California, but I do live in Northern California now. And this is not, just limited to Democrats. What you're seeing is, of course now I think people are becoming more aware, and the party that's out is going to be a little more, hammering on, hey, we're not into redistribution of wealth, right? But these plans, these programs, were pushed by both Bushes, and you'll find, I don't know, I haven't carefully looked into Romney, but I would say that he will, probably be a supporter of United Nations Agenda 21 in many of the aspects of it. And in fact, I am a liberal Democrat. I'm a classical liberal. And I do understand, unlike most Democrats, that the Democratic Party has been hijacked, that we are not looking at the Democratic Party now. Now, it's not illegal to be a socialist in the United States. But I think if you are a socialist, you should put that after your name instead of a D. And we're not seeing that. And I say, don't be a Nazi. Thank you.
And I
Go
have
ahead.
a question.
Yeah.
Following up a little bit on the presidents, whether they be or were Democrats or Republicans, one would like to think that they all have the best interests of this country in mind. Why would they sign on to something like that?
Well, you're talking about global governance here, and it's very difficult for us to even comprehend why anyone would want to participate in that. Now, why would a nation want to give up its sovereignty? Why would you want to have the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Why would you want to have the North American Partnership? The EU started as a trade agreement. The idea that a country would give up its sovereignty is antithetical to a free nation. And all I can say is that in researching this, what I have seen is that there are people who consider themselves part of the elite, who think that they will be running this. And I don't care if that's some joker living next door to you. These are people who really have an elevated sense of themselves, whether they're being patted on the back and put on a board or a commission, or elected to a position, or told that, yes, you're going to have, you will be rewarded. But there is obviously something in it.
But just a follow-up, please.
Yes.
For the most part, all of the presidents that were involved in this, at least, were relatively, actually quite intelligent. And they knew that if they were one of the elite you speak about, they were intelligent enough to understand that they would never be one of them because this project is too large, it would take too long. Mm-hmm. And it certainly would not become, one would think, part of their legacy either. Mm-hmm. So what do they have to gain?
I know this, okay, well, you know what you're seeing here, you do know.
Yes,
You
I know. George Soros, how many billions will he have? It's about power.
It is definitely.
Power over others. It has nothing to do with equality. If there's people that once they get there and they can manipulate and they feel in total control, that's what gets them going.
Well, but I hear your question, and what you're talking about is the time frame. You're talking about here's something that takes a long time. We're talking about something that has actually been in progress for a long time, and the end date is about 2050. This is what they're looking at, is to roll this whole thing up by 2050. And if you're looking at individuals who achieve personal power during that time period, who are personally enriched and personally feel that they are part of that group while they're alive, and that is their legacy, to continue that essential, strata. This is what we're having. We are falling deeper and deeper into poverty as a nation. But those who are very wealthy are getting wealthier. And that is what we're seeing as well, is that, the concept of power, those who are in power want to keep it, and those who are out of power want to get it. And this is definitely a power grab. Yes?
I have 3 points that I want to bring up on that same topic. One, where were most of these people educated, Republican or Democrat? At elite universities.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
2, since NAFTA was passed with George Bush 1, I was a huge detractor, opposed to that. What has the quality of life in the United States done since we entered this free trade agreement? What has it done for the elites, the Yales and the Harvards, versus what has it done for our blue-collar workers? And 3, and I'm going to leave in this point and not stress it too much, but power corrupts certain individuals, and we don't have to look too far outside of our legislature to see how true that can be. Mm-hmm. Some people who get in power cannot handle it, and they start thinking of themselves as bigger than the cause. And the way our presidents are marketed and the way our presidents are handled and this and that, I submit that we don't really know who our presidents are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree with you, and I agree with all of your points, because these elite universities, we're seeing outcome-based education in our school systems and in our universities, but in Yale and Harvard, and a lot of this comes out of, a lot of this does come out of Yale and Harvard. In fact, let me just say this really quickly, is that Yale, Mary Evelyn Tucker, who is, I think she's chair of the School of Forestry and Religion or something like that. She gave a speech at the University of Oregon where she was saying that churches will need to get on board with the ecological model or disappear. There is a sense that the earth, the Gaia, is supreme. And it goes beyond what we can conceive of. When you're talking about the fact that if you have mining, you have granite mining here, you're destroying, you're scratching the earth, you're injuring the earth by doing mining. This is the philosophy. And this is an academic philosophy, a lot of it. These are not people who are farmers, they're not people who are miners, they're not people who are working, who are living. These are people, this is also how they can say to people who are urban, who live in cities, we're losing our farmland.
Yeah.
For crying out loud. You go across this country in a plane, what are you looking at? An agricultural nation. If you drive out of here without your cell phone and you go off the road, it may be months before they find your skeleton.
Fly over New Hampshire,
Right?
it's all woods.
That's it. So the reality is that we are looking at people who are going to get packed more and more into cities, who are going to believe that everything in the world looks just like what they're looking out the window at. And this is part of this plan, is to manufacture this consensus and actually destroy what it is to have, representative government. Go ahead.
Yes, well, I would just say about that last topic that it costs an awful lot of money to run for office. Mm-hmm. And in order to get that money from the big moneyed interests, they vet you in advance. So, you cannot run for office without huge amounts of money, and you're not going to get it if you're not on their side. That's all I have to say about that. But I would like to get back to New Hampshire because I happened to look just a couple of days ago a map of the eastern half of the United States with the drone bases. You brought up the drones, the little drones and everything. One of those drone bases is in New Hampshire, according to this map. And the map also had future drone bases in the whole, that area of the country that I was looking at on the map. But then now to get back to our land use, where I live, the Quabbin to Cardigan Wildlife Corridor is one of the red, if you see the map of the United States, unhappily it's not big enough usually to show real close, but there's a little section that's red that starts in Massachusetts and goes up to approximately Cardigan. That's red, and on the map, red is little or no people.
Right.
And so
That's Dr. Michael Kaufman's map
Right,
of
yes.
what the biodiversity treaty would have done to the United States, but they're in fact implementing that through policy.
Right, they are. And also, just, was it a couple of weeks ago, I guess, the rivers, they designated the Connecticut River as one of the first blueways.
That's right. This is something new. Blueways,
Yes.
greenways.
What's the blue way?
These are rivers. There's more and more and more restrictions on what you can do along these. These are protected. They're just like your scenic byway, where they tell you, oh, we're not really going to impact your uses there. What you can do along that in that area will be restricted, as long whether you want to get your federal dollars, your state dollars, your assistance in maintaining that.
I thought the state owned all the waterways in the state. You're saying that we'll lose federal money if you don't?
Well, yeah, it's all through the carrot, the money issue, is how they get you hooked in, and then you sign agreements. You sign documents and
Contracts.
contracts.
I know what your bills are gonna look like next year.
Well, I think for this session.
Yeah, well, that would work on.
Yeah.
Rosa, thank you for what you're doing. I heard you on the radio, got your book, I've read it twice, I need to read it 4 or 5 more times. It's extremely well written.
Thank you.
I got here late, so I don't know whether you spoke about this, but do you understand how industrial scale commercial wind projects that are massively trying to come into Vermont right now? I drove down from the Northeast Kingdom north of Vermont today, and we're fighting a massive wind project that wants to be on one of our bridge near a lot of people's homes and so forth. Do you understand how that fits into Agenda 21?
That's definitely part of Agenda 21. What you have, of course, is you've got, first of all, part of demolition of dams. The wire dams getting demolished all over the United States, and they are. Thousands of dams are being demolished. These are hydroelectric dams that are being demolished that generate clean energy. You're also, you've got natural gas. We just found all these natural gas reserves. But you're finding that if you look at your climate action plans, they are actually planning to phase out gas appliances. Not just appliances, but furnaces as well, so that they will be more easily able to restrict your usage and control. Now, with turbines, of course, in California we have turbines. They're extremely expensive. They do kill wildlife. They kill birds. You still need all your distribution lines. It's very expensive to run these. And then a lot of times they're not producing. Same thing with solar. It's very expensive to produce. Well, that's the other thing that Siemens is involved with, is solar. So these are your alternative energy generators, your clean generators of energy. One thing that you're going to see is that these subsidies do not compensate for. You're talking about, talk about view sheds, talk about intrinsic value, talk about impacts. If you're driving through California and you see these, it's quite a visual impact. It really feels like you're on another planet or something when you're seeing these. So what you need to know is that the design for this, the plan for this, is to move us to energy that is produced, it's electricity, so that we are not using gas, because gas is cheap and gas is more difficult to regulate.
It's clean.
And it's clean. And it's here.
Right.
And we have distribution for it. And this is about sinking our economy and restricting our ability to be independent. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that's not very new to New Hampshire. We have RSA 9B:2 says, "It shall be the policy of the state of New Hampshire that state agencies act in ways that encourage smart growth." That was passed in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 12 years old.
Yeah.
That's gotta go.
There you go. That's right. You'll find those all over the United States. All this is in your law. That's right. I'll come back and have a big party with you when you get rid of that. Go ahead.
One of the topics that came up in Nashville recently was the International Baccalaureate.
Oh,
I've
yes.
never heard of that. Is that part of this?
Yes, it is. Yes. In fact, you might think, what if she got this on her brain or something? You're going to look long and hard for something that is not part of the United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. Yes, the International Baccalaureate is part of the United Nations Agenda 21 Global Governance. It's about teaching you to be a global citizen. That is the purpose of it. You are not a citizen of the United States with duties to your country. You are a global citizen. And that is the whole goal of that. Go ahead.
When I was in a meeting, everyone was kind of looking at you like you're crazy, but what the people do understand is, I said, 85% of you are going to be eliminated. Who wants to live? And that kind of opens it up because they will control who lives and who dies, depending on how you, what you're going to give to the community.
Well, I don't go there because, that's cool. I welcome you to do that. I don't because I'm talking about actual documents and laws that are on our books right now that we can do something about. And, when we're talking about going along to get along, when we're talking about turning in your neighbor, when you're talking about restricting and reducing your income to the point, and your food, your access to food, to the point where who knows what you'll be willing to do. These are fertile areas for speculation. And certainly there has been plenty of them. And I'd like to just tell you one thing that I forgot to mention that's very important, and that is your transit villages. We're talking about food sheds. Now you know about view sheds, right? You know about watersheds, food sheds. Think about this. You got your town, are we in Concord?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say we're in Concord.
I hope so. Yeah.
I hardly know where I am anymore. Okay, so we're in Concord. Then, let's just say we've got our smart growth here. You've got beautiful buildings, but let's just say we're going to have a whole bunch of infill. We're going to have our 10, 12, 14-story buildings, smart growth buildings, right here in the center of Concord. Then, of course, people have been moved out of the wildland areas through restrictions, monitoring of their wells, pulverization of their roads, closure of their schools and their post offices. So they're out of there. Now, how many people can live in a transit village? It's determined by your food shed, which is ringing your city. It's a green area ringing your city, and it is where your food is grown. You like bananas? Too bad. You're not growing them here in New Hampshire. You're going to eat what grows here. And the number of people, now you're saying, oh, this sounds crazy. I'll tell you in a minute how you can check this out. It is crazy. Stuff's all crazy. Okay, so let's just say you've got a 25-mile ring around Concord, and that's where your food is grown. The number of people that can live in this area is determined by the number of calories that can be grown in that 25-mile food shed area. And if you go to Cornell University, put that Cornell University and food sheds in your search browser, and you will see that this is exactly what they're talking about. They are talking about locavore. Have you heard that term, locavore,
Yes,
where you're
yes.
eating locally? All this stuff all sounds so good, right? Who doesn't want to support your local? What you're going to see is that those organic farmers are not going to stay in business. They cannot stay in business. We're talking about mega farms. We're talking about rings around our transit villages, formerly called Concord, Transit Village number 12 in New Hampshire. And you've got your ring of your calorie producing, and that's what you're going to be eating. And I'll tell you what, if you're a dissenter, you're making trouble, you look like a troublemaker to me, you're going to be, you may not be able to get your full allotment of your calorie. Now that's total speculation. I'm making that up. Go ahead.
I could lose a few calories. Can a local food shed be other than an area that's growing food and be controlled by a food market, such as a supermarket? And what I'm referring to is that exactly what you've been talking about. I'm a vice chairman of the planning board. I'm a little bit nervous about our regional planning because I'm hearing a lot of what I've already seen coming at us, and I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But across from where my town is, there is exactly what you're saying. It's probably 50, 55 acres.
Mm-hmm.
It's a village of the 21st century.
Okay.
It's a $1 billion project. It's all mixed-use, commercial, no vehicles, all walking. I just come back from
Take
Poland.
me to it. I want to see
3
it.
weeks out in Poland, saw what they were doing out there. My son was in Riga, Latvia for 8 months. Know exactly what's happening out there.
All right.
And I came here today not knowing what Agenda 21 was,
Mm-hmm.
and now I realize for the last year and a half it's being fed to me,
Yeah.
and it's opened my eyes to do some more research and some serious concerns because we're right now trying to rezone our whole town.
There you go. Yeah, you're going to
And
see. What are you going to
my
see?
thing is
Mixed
that
use,
the
transit
regional
village.
planning divisions are feeding us the information. Oh, we'll do it for you.
There you
You
go.
don't have time, and then
That's
they give
right.
it to you on a platter.
That's
And
right.
so I get some concerns with that.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up.
Yes.
Is food shed synonymous with collective farm?
Well, the question is, who is going to be doing that farming? That's a very good question. Whether it's going to be the people who live in the village or whether it's just going to be a mega farm. You have to ask yourself, what are we going to be doing in those villages? And that kind of goes, to that, like who needs the people when you're doing everything, when you've got major technocracy. But yeah, collective farm. But I have, another website. I have 2 websites, 3 actually, but one is Democrats Against UN Agenda21.com. And the other one is postsustainabilityinstitute.org. Sorry. And on that one, I kind of speculate on what can happen. And one is that it'll be a lot cheaper to have those human beings doing the work than machines, because what else are they doing? So, yeah.
Just a couple comments. I saw in the paper last week that the UN has declared obesity as an ecological threat.
Yeah.
And, New Hampshire does have a wildlands project. It's called the DES Wildlife Project, and they have mapped every single town in New Hampshire. You go on their website, you go into wildlife, and every section of your town has been redded out or greened out or whatever. Secondly, New Hampshire does have a climate action program, and it's based off of the UN 2007 IPCC report, which turned into ClimateGate, where they basically fudge their numbers in order to get to their end. And even though New Hampshire is well aware that all the scientific basis for the climate action program that they have, that was released in 2009, is based on falsified data, they have continued to implement the climate action plan through the Sustainable Communities Initiative.
I know, when you think about that, it's like, when you know something's wrong, this is cognitive dissonance. You know something's wrong. You know that what you believe is wrong, but you continue to do it anyway. And somehow you have to make yourself right. So that's why you have this incredible abalone-like grip on this stuff. It's very hard for people to let go of this. We have to be compassionate towards people who have grown up in this, who believe it almost like a religion. Because it's very hard to recognize that what you've been believing and supporting is a lie. And we all have to be compassionate towards people, but we also have to be, we also have to give them that information. And people who are elected to office, or people who are running, are, I'll tell you, if I was in a position of power, it'd be so fabulous. But if I were, and I was able to fire anyone who was an at-will employee, who was involved in implementing these plans, I would do so immediately. And I would go to my constituents. Here's something else I wanted to say to you, because you are elected officials, and that is that it's very difficult to refuse money and to justify it to your constituents. But I have seen your state a little bit and your people, and I think that if you stood up and you said to your constituents, we have a choice here. We can take this money and we can lose our freedom, or we can refuse it and struggle along without it. Are you with me? And I think that you'll find that your people are going to be with you if they understand what's going on.
2 points, please. First of all, we did that already with Obamacare. We told
Okay.
the government to take $1 million and
All
do
right.
something else with it. The thing that you haven't touched on, and maybe you thought of, I doubt that, is that if you concentrate a population, you have maximized the risk of death through natural causes and diseases by a factor of who knows what. I can't predict that, but there has to be some concern, even by those who doubt this, that if it were to come about, that just natural causes, meaning what was it back in England? It was like Black Plague.
Right.
Would be so much easier to
We are
occur
so
again.
much more vulnerable.
Exactly.
Completely agree with you. And of course, I do have that in my book.
All right.
I mean, all you have to do is infect one doorknob, right? You've got, or how about, think about this, you just lock one door and you got everybody in there. Oh, isn't it convenient? You got the train line real close by. Yes, obviously not just illness like that, but mental illness. When you are crowding people together densely, you're going to have more crime. You're going to have more, you're going to have unemployed and underemployed people together, stressed. You're going to have children, young children. Now this is about not having private space. No individual is going to have private space. Everything you're going to do is going to be out in public. And, children, they talk about, well, first of all, there aren't going to be that many children, is the plan. And, you think about this, I mean, obviously, most of us, and most of the groups that I go to speak with are my age or older. We're past the childbearing years. And when you see that the plan is actually, you could walk through kindergarten or an elementary school, you're going to see Agenda 21 Sustainable Development in every classroom. You're going to see their little drawings and all of that. These are people who have accepted this from the time they were small children. So when you tell them that you're going to be living in a small apartment with, 100 other families, they think they're saving the planet. But this is, in fact, really a dangerous plan, just in the most practical sense of being able to, from a security standpoint for our nation. Look how easy it would be to take out the population of our country with just a few megacities. I completely agree with you. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I told you weren't going to be bored. I mean, Rosa has really captivated everybody that she's spoken to, and I think that all of us need to take a step back and realize that everything she spoke about today is factual. Everything. You can go find it on your own, and you should. All right, this isn't a Republican Democrat thing at all. It is an American thing. It is about the loss of our sovereignty, our liberty, and our freedom, and that is the most important thing. I'm right here. I got Rosa's book. Let me tell you, I've read it. I'm halfway through the second time. Every one of you should grab one of these. They're here. We have them in the back. They're $17 a piece. This is the best book that you're going to get for the buck for $17. And buy a few of them. Give them out to some of your friends, because as far as I'm concerned, if you read, well, you're going to be like me. You're going to read this more than once because it's so packed with information. But it's a great read. It's going to give you a lot more information than you probably have researched already, and it'll give you research opportunities. So please get on board with this. My PAC is going to stay focused on this, and I know Rose is going to continue to travel the country and let everybody know about this. Ken, back in the corner back there, from Wyndham, Ken Iron, he has already been through this in Wyndham. They actually, after all of the testimony they gave, which I think everybody voted, talked against this, they voted in favor of a 3-2 recently. So that fight isn't over yet. But his website is on the green sheets, the little green sherbet-looking sheets you have there. He's also doing a lot of research with his partner, and you heard her speak for a little while today. Our site has some as well. There's a wealth of information out there. You all know how to use computers and Google. It's all there for you. This is an awakening, and it's a wake-up call for all of you. And the way I feel we have to solve this issue in New Hampshire is we have to legislatively kill it. I already know that the House reps have put forth legislation, and it got killed in the Senate. Well, we're going to be after the Senate. It's unacceptable. If you're an American, and I mean this, and you're in our Senate, and you're not on board with this, watch out. Watch out, because this is critically important. You're giving up our sovereignty. You need to pay attention, because once you do, you won't stop. Once I got on board, I have been salivating ever since to find more and more information. So thank you very much, Rosa. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you all for coming.
I'd like to say one thing about the Senate. One of the senators whose bill we attached the amendment to that would have banned Ickley in New Hampshire told me, I kept trying to get him to read the information, and he said, it doesn't matter, good or bad, it's local control. And I said, it is unconstitutional.
It is.
And he said, oh no.
Yep.
So.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.